Well, hello. I'm over here this time, and the lady in apricot, of course, is my co-host from the UK, none other than Andrena, Forrest, and our guest is who she's going to introduce today, and I'm looking forward to it. So take it away then, Andrena.
Hi. Well, welcome everybody. If you're listening to the new Dream in the New Dream on the replay or live, today is the 25th of August, 2022, would you believe? Which is a number 3 day, and we have 3 of us here today. And I'm in Bristol at the moment. Michael's in Birmingham and Jeff's in Brisbane. So we've got the 3 Bs. It's my great pleasure to welcome Michael Feeley with us today. I've listened to some of your talks. I just love the ancient knowledge and wisdom that you've been bringing through. So you're an author of, I believe, 7 books. Excuse me. You're doing ebooks. I see you've got children's books coming out. You're doing ancient code break-ins and so much more. So I'm so looking forward to you sharing how it all started and how this opened up for you, and the new knowledge that you're going to be bringing through. That, we've listened to a lot of gobbledygook in the past, but we're all ready for all the new stuff that is coming through. So with great pleasure, please share how it all started.
Thank you, and hello to everyone. Well, it all started for me when I was a child, and I always felt different. I always felt I'm on the wrong planet. I always felt society was backwards and completely insane. I never connected to school or the education system. In fact, a lot of my school reports written by teachers that I still have describe a very, very isolated, substandard child who never got involved in group things or never asked for help, never participated in anything. And that really went into teenage years. And then when you start having to think about a career and leaving school, and you have careers advisors coming into the school to speak to you, my only dream, my only passion really was to join the police force. And that was a desire and a dream that was very, very strong. It was an inner fire, and it was something that no matter what I was always going to achieve. As soon as I became 18 and a half, which is the minimum age for your first application, I applied. However, because I'd not really had any life experience, I was rejected several times until eventually I did get accepted, probably about 7 or 8 years after the first application. And I began my career in London, and I did my 18 weeks residential training attendant, which is the hardest police training college in the UK. It had a 35% failure rate. It had an on-site doctor and nurse because of the stress. It was morning parades, uniform inspections. It was constant assessment. It was constant examinations that you had to pass. And it was quite an enjoyable, but it was quite a strenuous education. And then I went on to the streets of North London and policed on the response. And it taught me a lot of things about humanity. It taught me a lot about investigating. It taught me a lot about following evidence, piecing together evidence. It taught me how to give that evidence in a succinct way and just dealing with facts. This is what happened. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. Your Honour, jury, whatever. And that's what it taught me. And I was considered an expert eyewitness in any court in the UK. I then transferred back to my armed force in Birmingham and continued that career. And probably about 12 to 15 months before what turned out to be the end of my 30-year career, which was year 17, in the year 2009, I came to be very, very disillusioned with what I was seeing and what I was being asked to do. And I refused to do it. And I almost went on an individual strike in the service and refused to do many of the things that I was being instructed to do by senior officers because I felt it was immoral and it was verge on illegal. So I refused to do it, which obviously didn't make me particularly popular, but it was my own personal stance. Probably about leading up to 2009, which was my actual awakening, I began to experience a lot of paranormal, supernatural things, and literally a day or night wouldn't go by without me seeing or experiencing firsthand something unusual. And that could be being on night duty and looking up at the sky and seeing dimensional portals, wormholes opening up and seeing UFOs coming out of them, to being involved in potential landings while on night duty, to see many UFOs on night duty, to be driving through my hometown during the day and looking up the sky and seeing gigantic cigar-shaped UFOs, 3 of them in the sky. And this was happening quite regularly. So with the disillusionment, complete disillusionment with the job that I was in, plus all the unorthodox, strange, weird things that were going on in my life, those 2 things combined sort of kind of forced me out of a career I sort of no longer felt I belonged to. And it kind of gave me a push, but I had nothing to go to. I literally just submitted my resignation. I had my exit interview with the chief superintendent, and I basically said to him, my parting words were, you tell me what to do, but I'll decide whether or not I'm going to do that. Bye-bye, thank you. And I just walked out without any emotion. But little did I realise that all of this investigative experience was then going to be used to investigate the evidence that had been left for us by the ancient world, by ancient civilizations from our ancestors, in their monuments, in their monoliths, in their religious writings, in their sacred scriptures. They've left a message for us. And I've dated the Great Pyramid at nearly 74,000 years of age using Egyptian star codes. So this knowledge has been hanging around, time capsuled, to be re-emerged now. And inside the Great Pyramid, there is a specific date where this knowledge will begin to be re-emerged. And that specific date, that specific year, our time, was the year 2001. So our generation now was always earmarked for the return, the re-emergence of sacred knowledge. And my investigative, analytical mind sort of is now used to decipher what they've left us to decode. And that is sort of why I'm now here. Now, all the things that I was experiencing and all the things that I was getting to piece together, it was more sacred and more valuable than to just put it on a piece of paper somewhere that's going to get coffee stains or get lost. And I thought, oh, what is the best way to document what is coming through? It is in book form, because when you put something in a book form, it's a lot of deep information, but a book can be read at the reader's pace. It can be read in their time. It can be absorbed in their time frame. So I put it into book form because you send a copy to the British Library, it is there forever. And the information that you find and reveal is documented forever for other people to also read. So when we say research, it's really just searching again. We already know this. We've already found it. We're looking for it again. And that's really why I went from what I was doing to what I now do, which is kind of investigation, but in a different way. And that is why I'm sitting here today and not driving around in a patrol car.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I'm not. You cover so many different things. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was about Egypt. Have you been to Egypt?
Yes, I have.
Many times,
This time, yes, and previously, yes. if you read between the lines.
Yeah, I hear you. Because I see that you've got some tours coming up, and I wondered if you've got any tours booked to go to Egypt, because I'm planning to go with a friend, and I thought it'd be great to go with you on your tours. So I just wondered if you've got one coming up for Egypt.
Well, there's a strong potential, yes. What happened was I was invited several times to Egypt by different groups to be co-host of a tour of the Giza Plateau. Unfortunately, it was a time where travel was restricted and I couldn't go. Now another group in America has approached me to do some kind of potential project where we could well be going to the Giza Plateau, or at least that is the plan. So yes, when I know the details of that, because it's still being organised by a few people in America, then that will be announced in all my channels and different things. So there is a strong potential of some kind of project which will be rather big on the Giza Plateau in relation to me and some people who are in America at the moment.
Fabulous. So where we are now, with all what we've been through and all the carry-ons on and so forth, how do you see us moving forward with the knowledge that you've been gifted for us to sort of move forward into working in the higher dimensions now, letting go of all the old stuff, what we've known, to move forward?
Well, all of the encoded knowledge that the ancients have left us talk about human potential and talk about how to reactivate human potential. So it really is a case of enlightenment and knowledge and wisdom, which they have left us to decipher. So what I have found is when I first started looking into these ancient civilizations, and I looked at the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians, I looked at all of these in mind with them being individual, separate civilizations, and I soon found out that that was not the case. What I found out is that regardless of where they are in the world, they are speaking of the same wisdom and the same knowledge, but they have different expressions and different ways of telling us about this information. And I did the same when I looked into all of the religions of the world, and there are 4,200 registered, recorded religions on the world. So
Wow.
when you actually look at all of them, they are separated by mistruth. They are separated because they're arguing over a mistruth and a lie. If they were to look at the true essence of what their religion is saying, then that would unify all of those religions instantly. Because what they're really saying is whether it's Christ or Muhammad or Vishnu or Krishna, it is all the same metaphorical meaning. And that meaning is human potential. I could show somebody 1,000 mystical books. I could take them to every single ancient site in the world. But I could reduce all of their knowledge down to one singular word, which is self. Because that is what they are all talking about, the human self, and how that human self is really a fragment of the creative force. And if you take the shape of the pyramid, for example, when you have the dormant state, the 0 point of the universe, and you see that as a dot, a monad, if you move that dot in any direction, it becomes a line. So now we have 0 dimension and the first dimension. But a line could potentially be infinite. But in a reality like ours, where we have an illusionary beginning and end, you have to curtail and confine that line. Otherwise, it just goes on forever. So you confine that by a triangle. So if you get 3 dots, that line is confined within the triangle. So the triangle shape is really divinity in the 3rd dimension. Now, when you get that triangle into a 3-dimensional shape, it becomes the pyramid. So when you start looking at matter and the way the pyramids were built, which is cubic, matter, the fabric of matter is the cube. Now, if you take the 4 top corners off a cube, within that cube, it reveals the tetrahedron, which is the pyramid. So what the pyramid is representing is the divinity within matter, your God within you. And those who find and reconnect to that God state are represented by the pyramid, because it really is the God, the divine awareness within matter, within the body included. So they were all talking about the self, which contains the word El, which is electricity, which is the 3rd dimensional energy of the creator. So we are God's fragmented. And that is what they're all telling us. And their encoded monuments are a silent witness and a legacy to the knowledge and the wisdom that once ruled on the earth. And the builders of the pyramid are represented by the lion, and in this case the Sphinx, which hides the book of Revelation of the Bible. So the original Bible is the Giza Plateau. Everything that you find in the Bible is on the Giza Plateau. The name Christ is encrypted within the Great Pyramid. As I say, the book of Revelation is encrypted within the Sphinx. It is all there for us to decipher and see, but they are all talking about the same thing, which is how to get from where we are to where we should be.
And that is all locked within us.
It is all locked within us, and we are our own key. If you imagine, in the beginning was the word. Word is a sound wave. So in the beginning, sound created, and everything that we see, whether that's a number, whether that's a letter, whether that's a sentence, whether that's a body shape, whether that's something in nature, it is a sound converged into that shape. It's almost a cymatics, which is really what a snowflake is, which is really what a crop circle is. It is a sound that is frozen into a picturesque shape. So in the beginning was the word. Now, when you look at dimensions and you look at timelines and you look at all of these different things, they are units of sound. So we are sound. Now, these ancient monuments are built by stone. The word stone is very biblical because it means father and son in Hebrew. So when you extract the word son and you analyze it further, it becomes sonic, it becomes sound, it becomes resonance. So what they're saying is that these monuments are built by stone, but that they were built by sound. And they are all amplifications of universal sound. And we are just, humanity is simply out of tune. In this great octave, we are out of tune. And the planet is a tune, the planet is a sound. Some people have incarnated here to hold that tune. Some people are incarnated here to change that tune. But in essence, we become out of tune and we become so far down the wrong side of the octave scale that these higher signals can't reach us, or they're very, very diluted when they do. And that really is the predicament humanity is in. But when we look at these beautiful buildings, these spiritually designed buildings, which are amplifications of sound, whether that's a church, which represents, regions of the brain, which is the cathedral of the mind. Cathedral means seat, which is the seat of consciousness. All of this sound is really to reactivate us into the higher octaves of the universe. And when you look at the geometry that I said earlier about the dot becoming the line, when you divide that line, you get the mean, which is the secret of nature. So from the very, very beginning of creation, we have the secrets of nature, which is 5, which is the golden ratio. And that is all hidden as well in all the monuments. That then leads you to pi, that leads you to then many, many geometric shapes like the pentagram, which is the symbol of the mysteries. And all of these things are encrypted for us to realize our self-realization through the advanced knowledge of the ancient world.
And they don't want that. I mean, we have never, well, most of us haven't been taught to tune in and tap into ourselves, have we? And I think that's the greatest gift that people need to realize. We've got all the keys within us, and is sitting quiet and allowing all things to unfold. So, to be aware of what's coming, what's happening, so that you're all in alignment, in tune. And, it's all about tuning yourself to reach that frequency within.
It is, if you imagine that the true temple, because in the Bible, God says, I am not in the temple built by the hands of man. So in that way, why we worship in church? Because God's not there. God is in the temple, which is here, the body. And it is the temple built by the hands of the Creator. Now, the temple is Golgotha, the place of skulls, where we crucify the physical to become divine. And the key to that temple, or the Masonic Lodge, is the tongue, because that is where we receive, the vocal folds, that is where we receive the tonal rills, which is voice activation. And when we speak, it is mathematical, it is words, it is sound. It is the words of the Creator that we express and speak so that everybody else can understand what we're thinking. So if we choose to bring through the divine knowledge, or we can choose to misuse the voice, and we can destroy somebody with the tongue by the way in which we speak to them, by the way in which we treat them. And when we start misusing words and our voice, we misuse the 5th chakra, which contains the Adam's apple. It is the fall of man. So we have all of we are the real temple, and every aspect of our body is a vibration, and every aspect of that body has a certain vibration that it needs. And if any part of that body slows down its vibration, that then manifests into physical illness, which originally starts as a vibrational spiritual problem. So we are all octaves, we are all sound. We are all the sons of God because we are all the sound of God. In the beginning was the Word. And that is what.
I think she's frozen. Yeah.
Yes. So that really is what they're all telling us. What they've all left us to find, which is really human potential. You know, the riddle of the Sphinx is human potential, and how we get ourselves out of where we are to where we could be. We are sound. The universe is sound. And I just saw a question from Andrew talking about, do you think Jesus spent a period learning from ancient mystery temples? In my opinion, there was no such person as Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was not a physical man. Jesus Christ is a metaphor for your inner fire, which is, if you imagine the body, the likes of Moses, the likes of Noah, the likes of Christ are anatomical processes of enlightenment. So when you get the likes of Moses, who takes the Israelites, which is ignorance from captivity, which is the lower part of the back, the lower chakras, he takes them on the Exodus to the land promised, the promised land. That is from the base chakra to the crown chakra. Now, that is called the path of least resistance in mysticism, which is also expressed as the open sea. So when Moses parts the Red Sea, it's really talking about the open sea at the path of least resistance from the base chakra, which is captivity, to the promised land where you see the burning bush, which is the fornix of the brain, which is your inner illumination. That is the story of Moses. And even Israeli archaeologists have said in 70 years of excavations, we've not found one single piece of evidence that the Exodus physically took place. That's because it didn't. When you look at Noah, Noah refers to the 7 chakras, the rainbow. When you look at Christ, the divine child comes from heaven and is born in a stable. A stable is a place of animals, which represents the animalistic nature of man, the animalistic nature of humanity, which we must overcome. That is why you see the centaur, etc., because half man, half beast, you've overcome your animal instinct in that symbol. So Christ comes down into the stable, the animalistic nature of man, where he has to progress and resurrect and rebirth himself in adverse conditions. That is talking about divinity in this world. So when you look at Christ, and there is no physical evidence that Christ ever existed. In fact, the Jewish Messiah was a character who fought Emperor Hadrian, and he was known as Shimon Bar Kokhba. He was known as the Jewish Messiah who fought the Romans in Scotland, which is the true Holy Lands, not the Middle East. So when you look at the journey of Christ, he takes you up Jacob's ladder, which is the spine, 33 vertebrates. So we have the Christ seed that is in the spinal and cerebrospinal fluid, which is saline based. Saline gives you sal, gives you salt, gives you salvation. So we have this seed in this oil. Oil is the anointed, and he gets taken up by Mother Mary, who holds the hand of the Christ seed. Mother Mary is the Egyptian Isis, which is the Kundalini, the serpent, inner serpent fire, the divine feminine energy. And it takes it up Jacob's ladder, up the body, taking the solar seed from the solar plexus, where it takes you into a place in the brain by the pineal gland called the vault. The vault means tomb. Now, all of these brain regions and bodily regions are confirmed by Gray's Medical Dictionary. Now, this crucifixion of the Christ seed happens by the 33rd vertebrae, Atlantis. And that is why Christ died age 33. He's talking about the region of the 33rd vertebrae of Jacob's ladder, the spine, where you also find Atlantis, the mind. So Christ now goes into Golgotha, in the vault, in the tomb, in between the olive and the pyramid, which are 2 regions of the brain. So the Christ story is a metaphorical story of the inner process of your own illumination. So Christ is far bigger and far greater than one individual person. Now, when you talk about Christ being the only begotten Son, when you start to analyze these biblical words, only means one accord, and begotten means wounded lamb. So in other words, the wounded lamb falls behind the flock. it needs nurturing, it needs more help to bring it into one accord. So what Only Begotten is telling us is that we will all be brought forward together, one. And that is why we exist, or we will live eternally through Christ, because it is talking about our inner illumination. All of these biblical stories, all of these biblical characters are talking about the same thing, as are the characters of other religions. So Christ wouldn't have spent time in the mystery schools because there wasn't a physical Christ, certainly not the Christ that is being taught by the church.
Wow. Well, excuse me, that's certainly thrown a different light on a lot of things we've all been taught. But a lot of what you're saying makes sense. I'm still getting my head around a lot of it. But yeah, phenomenal answers. And I'm just amazed that you can just go do non-stop with all of this information. So obviously you've done a lot of research. So are you channeling a lot of this when you're talking as well? As this come in, or is it through all your research?
It's a mixture. A lot of things that I get come in the form of an idea, or I will get a question and an answer in the same instant. Because when you have a question, the question has a vibration, and the answer to that question has the same vibration. So the two get married in the same instant. I get a lot of downloads. I get a lot of quantum equations planted into my head. I get a lot of genetic equations planted in my head. I'm privileged to see advanced technology because I am shown it comes to my house to show. I do a lot of looking into things as well, and looking into many ancient scriptures and reading between the lines, because that is what you have to do in order to understand what they're telling us. You know, when you look at, I mean, just a simple example really is when you have the 5 books of Moses, which make up the Hebrew Torah, you have Genesis to Deuteronomy. And if I was to give a Bible to anybody now, I pretty much guarantee that they would pick up the Bible and read it as a book from Genesis to Deuteronomy. However, when you look at the likes of Egyptians, when you look at the Hebrew mystics, they read and they write from right to left, because that is bringing them towards their heart center, their spiritual center. Whereas we're taught to write from left to right, which is taken us away from our spiritual center. So therefore, you should be reading from Deuteronomy to Genesis, from right to left. And then you get a completely different translation to if you read it from left to right. And that is one just simple example of how we're getting it wrong, and how the people who we are entrusting with truth and knowledge don't understand truth and knowledge themselves. So how can they pass it on to the rest of us? Because what has happened is this knowledge has been encrypted for different reasons. One, you know, when you look at the tarot cards, another example, the tarot cards were devised by the Knights Templars to secretly communicate amongst themselves out of the knowledge base of the Church of Rome. Now, when you look at the modern day playing cards, they came from the tarot cards, which also gives you Torah and things like that. But when you look at the Fool of the tarot cards, when you look at the Joker of the playing cards, that is talking about the new initiate who is just about to start out on his journey. So the tarot cards tell you more about the past than they do the future, because it is a secret communication between the Knights Templars away from the site of the Church of Rome. These things were hidden to protect the knowledge. When you look at all of these famous ancient paintings, like by Leonardo da Vinci, etc., they were encrypted in a geometric form within such paintings, because he knew full well that in the future people would begin to understand what he was talking about many hundreds of years ago. So they almost put it in a time capsule, like the pyramids, like Stonehenge, like the Heads of Easter Island, for a far off future when humanity is in a better place to understand what they are saying. Because until you're ready, you will not understand. And that is, and our whole system of truth, our whole system of history is false, because we are looking in the wrong place. archaeologists will not find the answers in the ground, because the answers are not in the ground, and we are looking in the wrong place. Our science is based upon Einstein's E=mc² theory, but that was only 50% of the equation, because what Einstein did, mass has two states of existence, which is static and which is dynamic. E=mc² only takes into account the dynamic equation of mass, not the static equation of mass. So the whole of our modern day science is based on 50% of the picture. So it is not fully correct. Had he have taken static mass into the equation would have been E=m, which is energy equals mass. That then goes into rotating vectors, which is what creates sine waves, which is what creates sound, which is what creates the universe that we live in. So even our science is not right. So all of these things has led us astray. We have the wrong captains steering the ship. And it is now time for this information to come back and be truly analysed. And then move forward as the only begotten, as one accord.
Brilliant. Yeah, so some of them need thrown overboard. Anyway, for leading us astray. But and we're all, more and more is being revealed in different ways, in so many different ways. Like there's more and more UFOs being shown and revealing. My sister and I were in Glastonbury probably about a month ago, and we'd been at a healing weekend all weekend, and we just couldn't sleep. So we came out, it's about 1:30, and we were looking. Well, my sister shouted out, "Quick, come and see!" And there was a cigar-shaped UFO going across. I've never seen one, and it was lit so bright. It was just amazing. And I go, "Hello, we're here." But I just surprised that more people. I know it's sort of 1:30 too. That more people didn't see, because it was like, oh my God, it was so close. And yet when my sister quickly tried to record it on the phone, all we've got is like this object going from here to here to here, totally different to what we saw with our human eye. And so for me, that was like, oh my God, that was absolutely amazing to see something so close. I've often seen different things in the sky, but this was the best yet. And there's more to come, apparently.
No, there is. What we've seen so far is nothing compared to what we're going to see. But most people don't even look at the sky. All they're doing, whether at the dinner table with partners, whether they're in the street with friends, all they're doing is looking at their phones. So first of all, you need to look into the sky to start seeing things. And when you do, when the frequency is compatible, because dimensions, timelines, everything else are a frequency, are a vibration. Consciousness is a vibratory awareness. It relates to vibration, to frequency, to sound. And when the two compatibles meet, then you are in that timeline, you are in that frequency, you are in that reality. And that is when you start to see things. That there are so many realities all around us at any given time. But because they're at a different frequency than our spectrum, we don't ordinarily see them. But when we do, there's a world of wonder out there. There's multiple realities of wonders that we are yet to experience, and it is coming.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
It's extremely exciting time, because the knowledge and everything else, and what is happening now in the world is by divine timing. And when you look back at things, you see that there's really nothing to be concerned about. It's difficult times, tough times. That is all by manipulation. That is all by design. But you see, as a humanity, we are fragments of creation. We are fragments of the creator itself. And that creator created resistance in the form of mass material in order to expand spirit. And that is what we are doing. We are making the unconscious conscious. We are making the hidden manifest. We are making the unknown known. And that is spiritualizing matter. And that is really part of what is happening. And there is so much more to come. There is so much more that is destined to come. When you look back at this time, don't worry, because as I say, there will either be earth to stand on, or you'll be given wings to fly. So don't
Totally.
worry. It's all
Totally.
fine.
No. Yes, it's totally being in the moment and fine-tuning yourself in, you know, whatever ways possible. Like for me, it's sound, it's voice, using your voice, toning yourself, and yeah, and different devices. But and there's so many children, different friends that have got their children are seeing, they're telling them things. And I know we had Mary Rodwell on weeks ago, and she was sharing about the children, you know, the gifts that they got. So, and I think they are waking up the parents, aren't they?
They are in many respects, because they have an advanced genetics, they have an advanced knowledge. Well, I say we all have the advanced knowledge, but we've forgotten it. We've closed the book and we don't read it. But they have the book open. They have the knowledge that they've come with, and some of the things that the children come up with, and some of the you know, if we listen to them, we get taught by them, we learn from them, because it's not been that long since they came here, so it's not really been programmed out of them yet. So, you know, they are the next generation. They are the ones that will take humanity, as the Egyptians call it, into the seventh civilization, which are the flame bearers of knowledge. And that, again, that is symbolized by the Olympic flame, by your Statue of Liberty flame. All of these different things are there to teach us and to tell us. And we are going from the unknown into the known. And there will still be pockets of those who don't get it. Well, they'll have to wait until they do. But the ones who are ready to move forward are no longer going to be held back by those who are not getting it. We are going to move forward. We are going to come into, you know, a flame bearer of knowledge age, where this information will come back again. And it is coming back. It is time to come back. It was set to come back. It's travel time 74,000 of our years till now. And it's coming back with a vengeance.
I know that you've got children's books coming out, or stories. What are they going to be based on? Are they going to be obviously with all the new information?
Yeah, what I wanted to do was to take this knowledge and bring it into the mind of a child. And the reason being is they're taught so much incorrect information that I wanted to address the balance. And the whole story really is this young child who spends most of his time alone in his bedroom. He's isolated, which is really me. The character is me as a child. And he hears a knock on the door, and he basically opens the door. There's no one there, but he looks down and there's a book on the doorstep. And he thinks, strange, but he takes the book and he takes it to his bedroom and just puts it somewhere in the bedroom. And every now and again, he just has this real urge that he needs to get the book and flip through the pages. And when he does so, he gets transported to a different part of the ancient world. And one of them would be Egypt, one of them would be Stonehenge, another one would be Atlantis, and different things. And when he's there, he's met by a guardian. And the guardian takes him, allows him to have his childlike fun. You know, he swims with dolphins, he does all the things that children would do, given the chance. But then at some point, the guardian says, you need to come here now, I need to have a word with you. And he then says, I now have some information that I need you to take back to your time. And he basically tells this character the true meaning of where he is. So if he's in the Great Pyramid, he tells him that the secrets of the Great Pyramid. When he's on Easter Island, he tells him the secrets of Easter Island, the secrets of Stonehenge, and so on and so on. And he comes back to his own time, and he thinks, oh, that must have been a dream. But then he looks down and he's actually got some kind of physical artifact from where he's been. So he's brought something physical back with him. So he then realizes that it was real. And then it's a series of 7, and each book will be a color of a chakra. So you are going through the chakras to enlightenment. And then at the end, all of the guides from each of the different locations join together for the last part of the story. So really, it's about this child who goes on amazing journeys, but brings back with him sacred, important information back to the modern world.
I think it's going to be a good adult book as well.
Well, the thing is, parents and grandparents are going to be reading these stories to the children. So
Exactly, yeah.
the children are going to be asking questions. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in relation to it. It's set for children, but it's going to be adults who are reading it to children. So it's kind of taking all of that into consideration. And that's really the complete, the complete ethos of the story to help children, to bring that information down to the mind of the child.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I think we'll enjoy reading it as well. So when's the first children's book going to be published then?
Well, they've all been written. I'm just
Right.
now just waiting for them to be illustrated, because the child, when he comes back, he also draws what he's seen and the characters, the guardians. So I'm getting those illustrated, and once it's illustrated, it's pretty much done. So I don't have a definitive date yet, but in terms of the writing of the stories, they have been written.
Fabulous, yeah. Wow. So I know you offer one-on-ones and workshops, and so is this all mostly across on Zoom, your workshops or your one-on-ones?
It's usually the one-on-ones would normally be on the likes of Skype, because it seems to be a simple system that most people can negotiate. So I do it on Skype, and the reason for that, I was having so many emails asking for help, saying, what's my purpose? What am I doing here? I've got all of these limitations that I brought from childhood. How can I get rid of them to move on this journey? And I was getting so many emails of that nature that I thought, well, I might as well do something positive with it and utilize it and do it correctly. So that's really why I wanted to offer this service, and it can be anything from a spiritual nature that the problem movie provides a safe space, or it can literally, I want to talk about the Heads of Easter Island, I want to talk about symbology, I want to talk about this. So it's really the person's time to utilize as they wish, to ask questions, to discuss problems, all of these things of a spiritual nature.
And so that's your one-on-ones. So what about your workshops?
About the what? Sorry, the
workshops.
The workshops, again, is kind of a work in progress. The workshops that are coming will be a complete day, for instance, where I'll choose a subject and we'll literally go chronologically for the whole subject, which will involve interaction, which will involve certain symbols that I'll send people away to go and look into and see if they can work it out, what it means, and come back and we'll discuss it, and then we'll say what it means, and if people have got it correct, and different things, and what that symbol means, and how it can move people forward, and what it's saying. So it would be an interactive, complete day filled with knowledge and self-help and finding things out yourself, and then coming back to the room and discussing it. So there'll be presentations and knowledge and interactions in relation to the workshops, but that is a work in progress that I'm working on to fill the day with.
So do you sleep at night?
I do sleep at night, but I do sometimes get information that comes into my head that wakes me up and I have to write down. Just the other night, I was in bed, and I guess it was some kind of in-between state, and I put my hand down and I could feel sand next to me on the bed, and I was actually lifting the sand, and it was like just dropping it and letting it fly back onto the bed, and I kept getting the words "prisoner of the men of the sand," and I'm thinking, well, that's strange, I'll write that down, and then the next day I'll look, it's probably about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning now, so I'll write it down and I'll come back to it in the morning. and basically it relates to building a firm foundation, because if your foundation is built upon sand, you are swept away. And again, it's a very biblical thing in terms of the followers of this knowledge have a firm foundation, not a foundation of sand. And if you have a foundation of sand, you are the prisoners of the men of sand, because you are without foundation. The truth is not the truth. All of this from just putting my hand down and physically feeling sand and letting it sprinkle over the bed. And this was in some kind of in-between state interaction. Sometimes I will get just a mathematical symbol and a number, like the square root of 937. And then the next day, it took me half a day to work out what it was, but it goes back to the mystery schools of Egypt. So a lot of the things that I'm getting, mathematical equations, physical quantum equations, they do sometimes keep me awake, but there it is, I write it down. It's like Paul McCartney and John Lennon used to wake up in the middle of the night and have lyrics, and they used to write them down. And then the next day they could continue. The same kind of thing happens, but in a sort of a spiritual sense.
Mm-hmm. I know last night I had 3 different dreams or different things that was going on, and I got up in the middle of the night. I thought, gosh, I need to write these down, because well, for me, I'll think, oh, I'll remember that, but will I remember it in the morning? It's completely gone. So I've gotten up, written them down, and I thought I need to sit and process later to see what they're about. I haven't got the message yet, but yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right.
so sometimes I forget as well. Sometimes I wake up and you just can't quite retrieve the information. It's just beyond you. But a lot of the time, I don't usually remember dreams, but if I do, there's a significant message in that dream, and I do write it down and I do work it out, and it is always relevant to something that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And I know, like, I write mine down, and there's a lot of powerful messages, but I know sometimes you've woken up, you've come out the dream, but it's like you're there, but you can't remember it, but it's been full on, if you know what I mean. I come out, I think,
Yeah.
I've no idea what it was about, but I know I'm sort of still like full on in whatever was going on, if that's the only way I can explain it.
No, I no, exactly. I mean, we all go through the same kind of things in terms of what we see, what we can remember, and what we can write down. I'm sure, the things that I do remember and the things that I do write down is a small percentage of what I get. But when you sort of when your awareness shifts from there back to here, then information is lost in that transition. Yeah. When you shift your awareness from the different aspects of you who are in multiple locations at once. And I know that for a fact because I've experienced observing something and then becoming the object, looking at me, observing it. And that is called spiritual concentration, which the Egyptians used to do in ancient initiations. Mm-hmm. So I do know that we are multiple locational. I do know that we're in many places simultaneously, but our awareness is only in one place.
Exactly. And I think it would be too much if we knew what we were doing or where we were, and then you come back to here, we wouldn't be able to cope.
No, we wouldn't. And it's saying, when we come here, we have this veil of amnesia because a lot of our memories are not in the mind. So when we have a new physical mind and we come into a new body and we come into a new existence, that those memories, those ancient life memories, those things that we've done, memories, are sometimes outside of our mind. And they are accessible to other things as well, because it's almost a database of information, which becomes the Universal Library or the Akashic Records, or as the Egyptians called it, the Hall of Records. And that is the same with our cellular memories. The cells that I have now are not the cells that I had when I was a child that made some of the childhood memories. So therefore, memories cannot be cellular because I have a different set of cells. So it must be some kind of database outside of you. Nothing is ever really outside of you because you are everything and everything is you. When we breathe in and out, we are connecting the inner kingdom to the outer kingdom, which is enshrouded by the divine awareness, which is the heavenly kingdom. And when you see the ancient keyhole symbols, that is a two-dimensional representation of the knowledge of the three kingdoms, the inner, the outer, the heavenly kingdom. So when we breathe in and out, we are connecting the inner kingdom to the outer kingdom. When we breathe in, we are connecting the outer kingdom to the inner kingdom. That is the breath of life. That is the Holy Spirit, because spirit means breath. And when you look at the biblical God in Hebrew, which is YHWH, or when we add vowels to it, becomes Yahweh or Jehovah, YHWH means to inhale and to exhale. So the God of the Bible is really talking about the Holy Spirit, the breath of life, not God. And when you look at the likes of the Sphinx of Egypt that has no nose, And the Bible tells us that the Holy Spirit hovers over the face of the water. The face of the water is the face of the Sphinx. It can't inhale the breath of life because it has no nose, and the breath of life is in the nostrils. So what the Sphinx is telling us with no nose is that we are spiritually dead and that we have separated from God. And when we reconnect to the Holy Spirit, to the breath of life, and we reconnect to God, we will reach our potential again.
Powerful. And I think, again, you're not really, taught meditation and breath techniques, especially for schools and the young ones, to get them into this frame of mind. Obviously, if we're more aware and more in tune, this is what people don't want. They don't want us connecting and getting our own information, do they? I forgot I was going to go somewhere, but my thoughts go on a minute.
How about I
So,
step in, Michael?
pardon?
How about I step in?
No, just one more minute. The breath. Now that is the key to everything, isn't it? And with whatever you've got going on around you, the key is to come back to center and just focus on your breath.
It is. Breath again is important because it leads us to bread, the bread of life as well. The bread of life, because of her yeast, her belly will rise. So the bread of life is pregnancy, it is newborn. But it also relates to breath, because when bread is being baked and it takes the yeast, which is its oxygen, it mimics the respiratory system of the body. So bread and breath are synonymous. But when you look at different words, like spirit is breath, spire is breath, aspire is breath, expire is to stop breathing, and the best one is conspire, conspiracy theorist. Conspire means to breathe together. So if you are a conspiracy theorist, you are breathing as one, in harmony with everyone else. So conspiracy theorist is actually a positive thing, not the negative connotation that the ignorant scream at us.
Definitely. Okay, Jeffrey, over to you. Permission to speak.
Hey, when you're talking about your children's book and the journey of a book placed there, and off you went, transported to these locations, and then come back. While I was listening to that, I actually got the overlay of your original story at the beginning, or somewhere that 15 minutes beforehand, when you're talking about the Jacob's ladder and the 33 ribs and the Atlas spot and all that stuff. I could see a book coming through where the same journey of the child, where it opens up and meets the best way to talk. If you're going to talk to kids, you have to talk about computer language. So you have to say, we've got an operating system here and we've just turned on the program. And the first program is you meet the guy who's in charge of the base chakra, and he comes in and starts talking to you and say, this is what's going to happen. This is your archangel or guardian or doorkeeper. And then each chapter is as you step through that whole scenario until you get into your vault. Yeah? Does that make sense? I can see that coming through as a great storyline.
Yes, it kind of isn't, and that's why there are 7 in the series, or at least the first series, and each of those 7, the colours of the books will secretly be a different colour of a different chakra, obviously going from your red, your base chakra, to your gold of your crown chakra. And it is kind of a doorway where when you are going through the different chakras, which are themselves octaves and keys to universal octaves. And no, absolutely, it is that kind of theme. But it's also it's bringing that theme in terms of the Jacob ladder, in terms of the chakras, in terms of the journey, the advancing journey. And that's why really the final book of the 7 brings together all the guardians, all the characters. When we start talking about the angel within, again, that is the breath, that is the breath of life, that is God within us. And our archangels really are our own intuition, our own, should we say, compass. So yes, it is that kind of theme where this is taking the children through each of the chakras, which are an absolute reality in themselves. and it brings them greater and greater and greater knowledge for him, this character, to bring back to his world, to pass that on to the modern civilization. So it's almost opening a complete doorway from what we deem to be the past to what we deem to be now. So it is that kind of theme, but just expressed in a different way.
Well, yeah, I could see the first Guardian turning up when the young fellow was putting together a computer, and he's pulled out a motherboard, and the guy's actually, a woman turns up and says, "Well, in the old days, I was called Gaia, so I was a universal motherboard who gave birth to all these different programs."
Yeah, look, I mean, again, the womb is significantly important. We have the womb that brings us into the third dimensional world. We have galactic consciousness, which is known as the galactic womb, where you have galaxy and galactic. Gala means mother's milk. You have the Milky Way, which is the mother's milk. So the womb up there is minimalized to the womb down here. So that really is the mother, and the divine force that is connected to the planet Venus is your Kundalini, which is your inner serpent, and that is your feminine divine force that is activated and goes up Jacob's ladder, activating the chakras as it goes. So the mother, the divine mother, the Kundalini, the Venus, the Queen of Heaven, which relates again to Mary and Isis, is all inside us, but it is connected to the cosmic womb. And when you see the likes of President Donald Trump and other people doing this kind of hand gesture, the two thumbs together relate to the return to the ether. Now, the bottom triangle, if I can get that right on the camera, relates to the womb, returning to galactic consciousness, the ether. Now, in the Bible, biblical David relates to the hand, because in Hebrew, David relates to the number 14, which is the 14 joints of the hand. But we have two hands. If you put the two hands together, the two little fingers are earth, and the two thumbs, as stated, are the ether. So that is the journey from earth to ether. And some people may be able to recognize that that is actually the tree of life of the Kabbalah, from earth to ether.
Yeah.
And that is the transition from here to there, from terrestrial back to celestial. And this journey is done through the octaves of the chakras, through the rebirth and resurrection of our self. And this story also goes into that, but in child language.
So in the tarot, you've got the Fool. So the journey is the Fool who makes that, who has, we talked about it earlier on about your daughter who's, 8 going on 18, where they have all this preliminary knowledge and then they jump off. And if they jump off, then they land on their feet, or they take the long road down to the bottom. But that Fool is the journey of, okay, I've got all the answers, now I've got to start the journey. And then it's, you go into that period of illusion until such time as you step through all those different 20-odd arcana cards to get to the final spot.
You do.
It's a really interesting journey, Yeah.
It is. Genie is genius, and the lamp is the illumination of the mind. But when you have the Fool of the Tarot, Torah, or you have the Joker of the modern day playing cards, it represents the new initiate just starting out on his journey. Now, they are also symbolized as a newborn child, because a newborn child is fed milk until it is old enough and strong enough to take on solids. The solids are considered knowledge in mystical terms. So the new initiate is a newborn child fed on milk until they are ready for solids, until they are ready for the true knowledge. And that is really, again, the birth, the yeast, the bread of life, because we are rebirthing. And when we are submerged into the holy waters of baptism, we are submerging the inner kingdom, and we re-emerge rebirthed. It is symbolic of a new life. When we're inside the church, we are the fetuses, we are the new initiate. And when we leave the archway, the pointed archway of a church, which represents the yoni, we are leaving and we are entering the world, the three-dimensional world, as a new initiate, as a fool, as a joker, until we are ready for the solids, which is the true knowledge.
So in ancient times, used to talk about ambrosia, which was the nectar and honey of the gods.
Yes.
And being fed on that. So
Yeah.
bring about enlightenment. So I take it your the story that you've given us today, have you enacted that to turn up in the vault?
Everything that I've spoken about today forms part of the book, because I say on one of them, this child goes to the Great Pyramid. On another one, he goes to Atlantis. And then on another one, he goes to Easter Island. On another one, he goes to Stonehenge and he meets with a druid. And this, that, and the other. So all of these things that have been said form part of the book when we reach that particular section of the story. So, as I say, goes to the Great Pyramid. He's met by a guardian who is a pharaoh. He's taken around the pyramid. He has a good time. He's shown certain things. And then gets called aside and said, now I have something to tell you. And I need you to take this information back to your world. And that is the true meaning of the pyramids, what they are. And then he goes to Easter Island. He does the same. And then the guardian pulls him to one side and says, now this is why you can only see the heads of the statues. He goes to Stonehenge and the druid tells him this is what it is. He goes to Atlantis and the guardian says, actually, Atlantis is a state of consciousness. It is a state of mind. And he brings all this information back to his world. Now, it stops there for the first series, because what this child then does, in my mind, is he becomes a bearer of knowledge, and he then passes it on to the people of his world. So that may be the second series, I don't know, but the first series basically has him accumulating all of this ancient sacred knowledge, which he brings back, on separate occasions back to his world. So he now has a full understanding of the ancient world. It brings forth its sacred knowledge, which will help humanity to progress. So
would you say that you empathise with this whole character of being yourself, the persona, and you've actually undertaken this journey yourself? So Mary Rodwell, your good friend, mentioned several times when she's been on the show that children these days can pick up the book. They don't read the book, they read the energy that's been brought through by the author, and it's been inlaid into the words, and they just say, yes, that's truth, So I take it the same thing will happen with your books when people pick up the book. As they go into it and they go into the energy of the words, they sense it, they feel it, and they really undertake the same journey that you've taken.
Well, that happens in my adult books, and myself. I've looked at my own books, and when I've looked at words, I've seen them turn into colours. So, if it happens in my books for adults, then it's going to happen in the book for children. And I have personally seen my words become colours, and of course, colours are a frequency, and letters and words are a frequency, and that frequency penetrates and connects to us. So yes, that's what will happen.
Right, so this particular book took my fancy. The Serious Point, Stargate to the Gods. I mean, what's the principle behind this story?
Again, that is one that is a work in progress, but the idea of that is there's a place in Egypt called the Serious Point, which is really as significant as the Giza Plateau and other regions of Egypt. But not many people know about the Serious Point and what it is and where it is. And the ethos of this book is telling you where it is in relation to the Giza Plateau, because it's marked out in alignment with Sirius. Whereas the three main pyramids of the Giza Plateau are aligned to Orion. There is a monument, shall we say, not too far away from Giza, that is perfectly aligned to Sirius, and that is the Sirius Point. And that is a significant kind of portal area. And that really is the ethos of the book, the Sirius Point. It goes into this relatively unknown section outside the Giza Plateau that is aligned directly to Sirius, which is important in ancient Egypt.
Right. I've been to Abyssinia Pyramid Complex. Not supposed to go there, but we did. Hey, move on to the next subject. Andrena, you got anything?
No, I mean, it's fascinating. I can tell, what you're saying about the chakras, Jacob's ladder, colors, frequency, and vibration. This is what we are. And it's, we are retuning in many different ways. But no, it's been absolutely fascinating. I love what you're sharing and, what you're bringing through to help humanity now more than ever.
Hang on, he's got to read this.
Yeah.
Vera's written a novel here.
Okay, I've only got a lot of kinds of music and sometimes evidence of that God Bell experience. Yeah, yes, I have, Vera. You see, what has happened is by the time we get to the story of Christ, it's already been used 33 times in the past. So what you find is that, Mary and Jesus was really, in recent times, Isis and Horus and Tammuz and Sol Invictus and all of these different things. So by the time we get to Christ, the exact same story, born on the 25th of December, was a Messiah, died on the cross. All of this story has been used 33 times before you even get to Christ in history. So, yes, I have of the same story. And when you talk about evidence, the evidence is in written form. When I was in the police force and I went to court and I was before a judge, I was before barristers. In any court, one of the first questions that I was ever asked every time in the witness box was, officer, when did you write your evidential notes? Now, if I was to say within 20 minutes, within 30 minutes of the event, so it was still fresh in my mind, they would allow me to use that evidence because it was recent evidence. I documented it straight after the event, so it was fresh. It was there, it was accurate. Now, if I'd have turned around and said to them, Your Honour, I made my evidential notes 400 years after the event.
Oh, God.
Can you imagine what would have happened? Now, we are expected to believe that the story of Jesus that was written by the own admission of the Bible writers was written 400 years after this so-called character existed. How can that be accurate? If I was to say now, write about what I said at the beginning of this interview, I don't know. I can't remember. I bet the two house cards, and I bet the audience cannot remember what I said at the beginning of this interview was just over an hour ago. So in 400 years' time, how accurate are you going to be when you write about this? Not accurate at all. And yet we are told to accept this as valid evidence. It is a metaphor. And the gods of the past are magical formulas to open gateways and evoke entities. They are not real. They are metaphorical to teach us that we are God, to teach us of our potential, to show us the path back to divinity. And they would have been expressed in words, in pictures, in hieroglyphs, in different ways so that people can understand what's going on. And it has been misunderstood and it has been mistranslated.
Well, there you go. Maybe that guy 400 years ago was put in a position where he had to say, I do, yes, dear.
You see, the most read, I mean, the Bible, which again, I don't criticize the Bible. It is a work of genius. When you actually read it at its true levels, it is an absolute work of genius. But at the levels that it is taught, it is a story. But it is a story that had to be edited and accepted and given permission by the Church of Rome. So what you are reading now as valid historical fact is a Roman doctrination of fact. It is not real. We believe that the Holy Lands of Jerusalem are in the Middle East. They're not. They're in Scotland. When you look at Palestine, Palestine means between two walls, which is the Andrena and the Hadrian's Wall, where the Jewish Messiah fought Hadrian because Hadrian wanted to sort the Jewish problem. This happened in the United Kingdom, in Scotland. The major ley lines of the world, which are the dragon lines, which are the arterial routes of planetary initiation, the hub of that is Roslin Chapel. The guardians of the chalice points and the ley lines are the Knights Templars. That is the true Holy Grail. It is the sonic blueprint of creation that is evoked into the chalice points of the ley lines of Earth. Now, when you have the dome-shaped buildings of the modern world, when you have the Stonehenges and the pyramids of the ancient world, they are spiritually designed buildings upon the intersections of ley line energy. The dragon lines, that is where we get George and the dragon. George means cleanser of land, and the dragon are the arterial magnetic energy lines. So that is your Holy Grail, and they congregated in Edinburgh, which means the town or the city of Eden. That is where the true Holy Land is. The Romans have changed our history. When we went from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar under Pope Gregory, we lost 1,000 years of history. And that has been filled by fictitious characters. Our history is not correct. And when we become mature enough to realize that we've been duped, then we can move on.
Fascinating. Yeah, well, I haven't been able to ask is, I mean, yeah, it's just fascinating. Is mind stuff. My gosh, you know, there's a lot to take in between the lines as when you're talking.
Okay, so metaphorically, so to summarize, metaphorically, you're saying that the journey is one that's done. Is that done as a meditation state, where you go within yourself and you unlock each one of these parables?
There's different ways in which people do the same journey. And some people choose meditation, some people choose breath techniques, some people choose to go and isolate from society and sit on a mountain in Tibet. And some people do it through advanced knowledge, which holds a higher frequency. Whichever way suits you is the way that you walk the path. Because I find it difficult to meditate because there's always something going on in my head, and I find it difficult to switch off. I don't do breath techniques because I never have. But I do knowledge. I make myself an open channel to receive knowledge. I connect beyond the 5 sense reality, which is really what the higher Forrest is telling us. It's telling us about the infinite expanse beyond the 5 sense reality. And when you do that, you start connecting to this advanced information. So that advanced information carries a very, very high frequency, which elevates me. So everybody has a different way in which to achieve the same thing. You know, if I was to catch a train heading for, you know, the centre of Sydney, and you were to catch a different train into the centre of Sydney, and some of your audience were catching other trains to get to the centre of Sydney, we're all heading for the same place, but we're taking a different means to get there, a different journey, a different route, a different rail track. But we're all going to end up in the same place eventually. So everyone has a different way. Now, when you look at the words, as we've already expressed, words carry energy, they carry frequency, which is a sound, and they carry a color, which is a frequency. Now, when I've looked at the Egyptian codes and the Rosetta code, and you look at green, and how Osiris is really the green man, and how the color of nature is green, which relates to 528 hertz. When I had the idea to split up the 528 at 528 hertz and divide it, I got 0.3125, which as a fraction is 5/16, which is expressed 1/4 plus 1/16. Now, in Egyptian I fractions, 1/4 is the pupil, and 1/16 is the ear. So what is that telling you? Those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will come into this knowledge. Now, that I got that from 528 hertz.
Wow.
So these things are there for us to work out, and that's part of the Rosetta code. Those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will find this knowledge. Those who realize that there's actually multiple levels of meanings between the lines, you know, a mystical exegesis, which is reading between the lines. When you look at it and you have an understanding of codes and symbols and you look at the Bible thinking there's a hidden meaning here, there's more to this, you will find it, because it will connect, but it will only connect when you are ready to connect with it. It is hidden, and there's many examples of the hidden becoming manifest. If I was to, for argument's sake, show you the number 18, and I was to say, what can you see? You'd say, I can see the number 18. But what I see is the number 18 plus 2 9s that are hidden. When I look at a photograph and I see a family portrait, and I see the family, but I also feel the presence of the photographer, who is hidden but is still there. So if you want to understand the invisible, you must first have an open eye for the visible. An open eye is a saris. A saris means open eye. And what is the open eye? It is there, which allows you to see beyond the 5 sense reality. So when you start opening yourself up and have the realization that there's actually more to this than a story about a 120-year-old man building a wooden ark to house every single animal of the world, that is a children's story. So what does it mean? And when you start looking beyond the story, the superficial story, and you start submerging like the submarine, you then get to a deeper depth. And it's at that deeper depth is where the knowledge is hidden. And that is the mistake. People are taking the superficial story as historical fact. And when you do that, you will never, ever see the true meaning.
Wow. Well, I mean, we could go on for ages talking about this because it's just endless. You've been a breath of fresh air and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and all of these ancient codes, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Lots. And I look forward to reading the children's books first, and then I'll pass them on to the grandchildren.
That's the idea.
Yeah. But no, it's been really fascinating. So I thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule and sharing all of these things with us, because I know there's so many of us on the same page with you, and opening up more and more, being more aware and not listening to all the rubbish that's been told and fed. And people are waking up now, and this is the greatest time in history that we have been here for. We're in training for.
It is all timelines, all roads have led to this being a significant time. And that significant time is the return of where we should be, where we once were, not where we are now. We are beginning to understand what we truly are, not what we're being told we are. And there's a big difference.
Well, I think that for today, that is absolutely fascinating. And perhaps later on down the line, you would come back and share more wisdom and codes with us. So yes, thank you so much for sharing such amazing information.
Thank you very much, Beth.
I'll put up all these comments so they're all coming in. Okay. Right.